bop.
Hi, I'm Janelle Pizarro.
And I'm Frederick Philip Von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology
that love what they do and do tech good.
Ha! Doing tech. Hey, everybody, we're with Trent Walton. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Yeah,
Yay.
Thank you so much for being here. We're at Event Apart live on Tuesday, October 9th, I believe. And yeah, we're kicking it with you. We're so happy to have you on the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you mind providing a little bit of context for our audience that obviously will know that you work with Dave and what that means, and a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, I work with two of my best friends on the internet, Dave Rupert and Reagan Ray. We've been together. We've known each other since we were high schoolers, but we've been together officially kind of like as an LLC or whatever for about 11 and a half, 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Now. So yeah, we don't know anything else. It's just been us together working on the web. And so my specialty, I don't know if I'm probably the one that doesn't have one. Reagan gravitates more towards just focusing on design and like front end code, and Dave is pretty much like front end developer. And I answer email and pick some fonts and do whatever like no one else wants to do, and a few other things. So, but I mean, I love to write front end. I love HTML, CSS. I love the design. I love typography. I love grids. I love layout. But most of my time is spent on emailing and discussions and debates and things like that. So,
debates.
Well, client.
Client debates. Sure.
Teams we work on. There's always people things to be dealt with.
There are those people that always want things their way.
Right.
Darn people.
Yeah, that would be cool if it wasn't for all the people.
All those people.
I'm kidding about it. Yeah. They ruin everything.
Those people that pay for projects that they weren't done.
Oh yeah. Oh, are we talking about clients? That's different. Clients are the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I just meant people in general. I wasn't trying to single out our clients.
Clients are above people. It's a higher class, an echelon above.
Yeah. Quote me on none of this. I guess we did, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That seems kind of to be the overarching theme of the day, I think, is people ops, right? Like managing people, being around people, dealing with people.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is like you have multiple people with different talents, but you try to sort of gain the same perception and get everybody on the same, what I say is what I might say is like fast and bloated in terms of like a website build, a page speed. Mm-hmm. You might be like, well, this is like optimized to make a ton of money, so I love it. And so there needs to be like kind of a unification of perception. So a lot of what we do is have those discussions and work with people. So it's as much as I joke, isn't about right or wrong necessarily, but it is like, where are you coming from? And it takes the most time.
Yeah.
So, unless you just want to build stuff by yourself, which
that's always boring.
Maybe a little boring after a while.
Sometimes.
So,
well, unless you're doing Pigline, right? Then that's not boring if you're Alexa skills.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, it's always interesting to find some kind of challenge that you might not have thought of, conceived of, and somebody approaches you and says, yes, I want to fly a kite to the Mars. And you're like, I don't know why you would do that, but I'm on it. That sounds amazing.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you got the cash. I'm ready to jump that wind and hit the solar sail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's your talk about?
Tomorrow I will be speaking about third-party scripts.
Third-party scripts, not the first or second.
Yeah, those are probably okay. Yeah, third-party scripts, and I mean the way I got into it really wasn't by choice. Like I said, I'd much rather just speak about fonts or like laying things out. But as we ship projects with clients, we do a lot of prototyping, and so we'll deliver a prototype, and that prototype can often like manifest itself as like this is like front end code, maybe a little bit of back end integration or whatever, but it's like the team's vision for what like the optimal way the project could be delivered. So it's like here's a package, and then there's like an integration phase, and that could mean like a CMS integration, like let's plug like Craft CMS in, but we normally know about those. We might even have the hooks for those in the prototype, but there's usually more to it than that. And the talk kind of gets into like what happens when things are living online for a while, what it takes, what kind of business logic and API, what is plugged in to make the site real, if it's a transactional site or if it's like a social site with ads or whatever the case may be. What are all the things that are added to the site after like at least in just my own experience, I deliver something. And so there's some like, I realize I'm guilty for a few things there because I'm not being proactive as to going, sometimes I'll know there are ads and I will assume if I'm making a performance budget that there's going to be a penalty baked in. The prototype that I deliver will be slower in the browser and I'm like ready for it. But a lot of times I'm not asking around and the organization may be so big that I haven't done my work to have like led a discussion or led a process around what else are we adding to the site. So we speak a lot about, I can subset a font, like maybe I have like a condensed font and all I want are uppercase letters. I can cut out tons of characters and save some file size. I can minify code. I can save some space there. I can optimize images and save space there. And what I've found is like I might feel like I have like saved the world and I've gained a lot of extra free kilobytes for other things that may be more important, like content or whatever. But what I found is that those optimizations pale in comparison to the amount of extra stuff we're adding to via third-party scripts. So if like I save a few kilobytes, there may be like a meg of other stuff that I didn't account for. And so whose fault is that? It's probably mine. But so this talk is sort of like exposing people who are often not included in those discussions about what business logic, what analytics, what remarketing, what kind of tools are we going to be adding to the site? A/B testing tools, and are those up for debate? Sometimes they're not, but maybe that's also because I haven't been like included in the discussion and maybe raising privacy concerns throughout. Mm-hmm. So it's sure. Not. I mean, of course, for me, it's going to be like I think we should have less of this stuff. And I've noticed that there's a lot of redundancy. How many different analytics tools do we need? Some sites may be loading 3, 4, or 5 because departments aren't talking to each other.
Sure, marketing might say, hey, we need ad roll on here.
Exactly. Yeah, and so maybe we could unify some of these things. So a lot of it's just sort of exposing kind of a whole new, for me, like if I go back to my history on the web, it's like I liked image comps and like laying things out originally. And then I got into HTML and CSS and then JavaScript and then performance and like multi-device responsive web design. And then it's grown as my perception and my like area of, I wouldn't say expertise, but like what I feel responsible for has grown. And so this is kind of, for me, the next one is, oh, wow, like third-party scripts have a massive impact on the quality of a site. And then if you think about it from the user perspective, like browsing without an ad blocker or a content blocker makes the web kind of unusable. And then in no way is it like advocating for blocking ads and not supporting sites that you like. But there is this thing that there's like a chasm between what we're serving on the sites that we build and what users will tolerate. Right. And so you see content blockers, you see things like Firefox, I think is now soon to be implementing. They have like a content blocker, a privacy tool in the browser, but they might be turning it on by default. So hopefully this like starts more of a discussion around how we can design, I wouldn't say around, maybe I would say personally, let's design around third-party scripts, but how can we design with third-party tools, scripts, and services so that the things that we're doing are like helpful to the business. Like I'm fine if somebody wants to track like a little bit, like if I'm on their site and they want to know, well, Trent, like he looked at spatulas and then he looked at a panini press. Okay, cool. Like we sort of have some data. I don't know, whatever.
Williams-Sonoma ad.
Right. Yeah. Let's throw them a Williams-Sonoma ad. And I'm fine with ads too. Like if I'm reading an article, I'm happy to support the content of the site and help them generate some income, of course. But what I don't want is like 14 megabytes of other junk following me around on the internet. So there is no like gold standard for how to do this. It's sort of it's just kind of a mess right now. And so I think and I will admit I wouldn't say this about anybody else, but it's for me, I feel personally like responsible as a designer and web builder. Because I haven't been including myself in those discussions. It's not easy to be like, hey, here's a table. I'm going to sit down with you and I'm going to have all these opinions about stuff that you were doing without any kind of input earlier. So there's tact and there's a lot of like, back to what I was saying earlier about perception, unifying perception and almost sharing what you see with others as opposed to just saying, we have too much of this crap. It's awful. No one's going to be moved by that. But if you start showing performance metrics and sort of equating, page speed and just general UX to like maybe sales or performance of the site, you can get to see some results. So in a nutshell, a big nutshell, that's what I'll be speaking about tomorrow.
Cool.
So, yeah. Well, it's hard to argue with those numbers, right?
Yeah, if you can get them, it is. I think, and that's the trick though. It's like this is another thing that I wonder, and I've seen in my own experience. We have a lot of data, but we sort of conveniently use the data. Like you can, if you want to support your own idea or your own, opinion about something, it's easy to find some piece of the information that will do that. So yeah, you get the numbers, and but you have to make sure that, like, in a broad sense, like they're representative of what you want to do and all that. So
yeah. Who do you think are kind of like the biggest almost offenders of like third-party kind of usage?
I can answer this without naming names, though they might squeak out, or it might be really obvious. But this is understandable. I think sites that sell things, obviously things like Amazon or like a Best Buy, they're offenders because there's like 30 or 40 or 50 requests coming from not bestbuy.com. Granted, some of those are CDNs. It's like, that's kind of like best practices, like host your images where they can be delivered, like things like that quickly, images and other things. But so sites that sell things, and then also obviously like news sites. They obviously need ads to support the business model in a lot of senses. So there's a lot of trackers, a lot of ads. The thing about ads too is if you're on multiple networks, it's not just like one request per ad. There's a ton of analytics tied to it. So those can be, they can get rather large. And some of the, the biggest publications online tend to have the biggest numbers in third parties. I did about a year ago, I took the top 50 Alexa sites in the US and just did like a what's the average number of third parties. I indexed all of them, and after all that, I had like a 9,000 cell spreadsheet. I wanted to see, and so just to kind of see, like, okay, this third party script is loading on like Microsoft, or this third party is loading on Best Buy, just to kind of get a sense for like what popular sites are doing. And for sure, definitely like the news sites had the most. And so I can't remember off the top of my head. You'll have to like look up the slides, but I mean, there were double digits easily for like, you have like your URL, and then there's like double digits, not double digit requests, double digits for different places requests are coming from. So it excludes multiple. So like, for example, if a site has 20, that doesn't mean that they have 20 requests. It means that there's just 20 different places that content is coming from, as I am at that one website. So it can get out of hand. And then I think obviously it's important to note too that some of those are really, really small. So there's a privacy implication that you have to think about. Like, I mean, they may be small in file size, but they have a massive impact in like ethics, perhaps. But then there's some that are just small and not a big deal. But then there's some that are like, they block the rendering of the page, and they add tons and tons of kilobytes to the page load itself. So the impact can be felt in a variety of ways.
Well, how do we as designers, developers, do a better job of, say, alleviating that pain on maybe a small to medium-sized business? Like what kind of things can we think about and change right now? Well, and one thing I think is funny, I've asked this question a lot to other like agencies and web builder friends that I've had, and they've said, which I would have thought was not the case, was to utilize a tag manager. And if you've seen Google Tag Manager,
right? And if you see tweets about third parties, it's almost like and I agree with these. Like, there's a great Harry Roberts tweet about third party scripts, and it's like, this is your website, and it just shows like a network requests panel, and it's kind of light and moderate, like light to moderate normal website. And then he's like, this is your website on tag managers, and it's just like hundreds of requests and a bunch of extra stuff. And that's true. I think that's like giving people a tag manager so they can just start adding third-party things here and there without any structure is like an awful idea. But I've had some friends who like will run kind of that admin side of things for their clients, and they say, to get everything on a tag manager, if you have purpose to what you were doing and you were having that discussion to figure out, what do we need to add? What are our business goals? What are we trying to achieve? And how can we do that in a performant way on the web? Like if you have everything in a tag manager, then you have your inventory already done. But if you don't have everything in a tag manager, then there are a lot of tools you can use online, like builtwith.com. Web Page Test now has Simon Hearn's like request mapper, so it shows like little like dots and bubbles, like a solar system of requests if it gets too large. But you can see those associations. But I mean, if you have it in Tag Manager and you sort of mandate, this is how we're going to load anything that's not like part of the website. It's a way to kind of say, okay, what do we need? What's maybe violating our performance budget? If you don't have a performance budget, it's like, well, our site's too slow, so what can we cut out? So it's an easy way to sort of expose that to everyone. You'd have to kind of maybe not get past the password around to that too much. Yeah. But I think that's one thing. And the other deal, like, obviously, is just to talk more about it. I have not been proactive in the past, like in years past. So I think that, over the past couple of years, as I've put more attention on this, the results have been better because I've been asking questions and like saying, I think we have too much of this stuff. This isn't really compelling, but showing people with numbers and like running performance tests and taking the time to make a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be over the top 50 sites. It can just be the site that I'm working on, and maybe even like a competitive analysis of like, 2 other sites in a similar like business sector, just to say, hey, look, like this other company's not using half as much as we are, and their site's way faster. Yeah. So that can be compelling as well.
I mean, even having that tag manager too is to be able to show, like, look at all these things that we have, rather than it being hidden in an include file.
Yeah, yeah, and who knows? And I mean, or multiples. I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah. I mean, one include file sounds like kind of awesome too, because you're like, this is where we're putting everything. But if you're just like, we'll just drop these on some of the layout files, and then 3 weeks later, and you have a new hire, and somebody else drops a few things on some other files, it can get really messy and really be pretty awful quickly if you're disorganized. So yeah, I think being organized, whether it's tag manager or not, but that brings to mind that the tag manager thing can be intense, because the first time I got into Google Tag Manager, it's really enticing. Like, it's like shopping for new toys.
I'll take this, I'll take that.
Yeah. And if you don't, I could see if you don't get to work on the web, if you're not like deploying any changes or designing something for yourself, if you're contributing to the site in that way, and this is the one portal you have to access the site, it can be kind of intoxicating, and you're wanting to, I can change the site, and all I have to do is like drag this into the, and it's magically loaded onto every page.
Yeah, so nice.
Yeah, how nice. How nice for all the users. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, how do you anticipate these kinds of problems before you even get to the problem at hand? How do you communicate that even with your team, with who you're working with, and eventually, like, what if that situation has to like affect the user in some way? Like, how do you anticipate those goals?
Yeah, I think it can depend. I mean, if the site already exists and you're doing a redesign, we typically do an analysis or an audit of everything. So if like we're kind of generally keeping the same brand, for example, like the same visual style, we'll do sort of like an accessibility check and make sure things like color contrast are right. We'll do a UX audit and just be like, okay, this part of the user, like the checkout flow, is really weird, and y'all thought about changing it. And with that, we will say, and it's usually lumped into a performance like analysis. So it's like, this is the like web page test results. We'll run it at multiple places. Like, this is what page speed says, and bring it up in the context of that. But we're very careful to not just make it about performance, even though that's like the biggest piece of it. But I think anytime you have lots of scripts, there's a bit of like a weird, like a smell to the site, like it can load slowly, and whether you, and even like it can cause processor lag. So if you're on like a low powered device, you can kind of notice there's like a jank to the scroll. So we try to just ultimately boil it down to like business metrics, which is like kind of not a kickoff meeting sort of a thing. But if we're raising these questions early on, like, I think it can help, and then it kind of opens the door to be able to ask for like more. If it's a new client, we're redesigning a site, you can kind of ask for more detailed data. If it's a new site, then it's kind of easier, I think. But you have to again be proactive. If you don't ask, and then all of a sudden you're about to ship the site, and you're like, okay, it's the week we're going to ship the site. Add these 20 things. Well, that's my fault as the designer for not bringing it up. So that's part of the like discovery process, or whatever one you want to call it from the beginning. It's like and if you think about it, that really should kind of come up earlier. Like, if you're going to be using these tools for data to, like determine what kind of products you recommend or something like that, or how that should be a discussion from the beginning. But if it hasn't been in the past, then like now is definitely the time. And that's the way we just strictly ask it. It's like, what are we going to be using that is not going to be living on your server or your CDN? And so it tends to that one question tends to get you all the way, because there's usually if there's no response, then it's like, okay, well, great. We don't have anything to worry about unless, maybe there are missing some opportunities that we can make some recommendations. But more often than not, it's like, oh yeah, we have stuff that we're going to need. And then it gets into a discussion about progressive enhancement. Like some of these third-party things are like modernizer and the things that are like acceptable, but may not be necessary anymore. A lot of the audits that we do, it's hard to argue against like ad network. Like, and not that I would. I mean, if that is needed to support the business, then obviously, but like some things that we may not, if we're going to be coding a new front end or new CSS, maybe we don't need to support certain things, and so we don't need like polyfills that we used to depend upon in the past. So, yeah.
And I think it's hard too because you'll get to a point with an old site where people will go, you know what? I don't know what that does. I don't know why we need it. Ask this department or that department or the other department. So, man,
I have no good answer for this, but I have been known to say, well, we're going to rip it out, and if anyone complains before like we ship it, that would be the recommendation. And usually the clients we work with are like, yeah, fine. Like we need to move on this. Let's just clean house. If the redesign process is 3 months or something like that, you can say, here we are, like, here's the new layouts. And typically if you're bringing this up at the beginning of the process, there's likely going to be QA and everybody's going to see it. Everybody's going to kick the tires. And if you explicitly say, remember, like we've removed these, everything that's with the site is all new. So if you're thinking something's going to be there, like check, and we can seek those things out. But a lot of times it's okay. You're right. A lot of it's just like a junk drawer type thing.
It really is.
Yeah. So you get it out of the junk drawer and you're fine. And so, yeah, a lot of times most of the stuff is like, it was added for one thing. I mean, and if you think about the nature, I'll be on like a call with like a team that we're working with, and someone will kind of, that I've never met or heard from, will pipe in to add, I have a script I need to add because we're running a campaign tomorrow. And you're like, oh, cool. And that'll be there for years unless you remember to take it out. So back to the tag manager thing. Like, I haven't, and I'll admit, we haven't done this yet. Because usually this stuff is way more locked down and somebody else has control over all of those things. But that's kind of the process we're in now. Is like, let's just use Tag Manager for everything. Usually they're already using a Tag Manager, but they don't know what else is there. So we haven't quite, we're about to do that with a client where it's like, this is the line that we are drawing. And like if it's, no third party anything, if it's not in the Tag Manager. So we'll see how that goes. But I think if you have that inventory, that you don't have to go. It's not like, well, it could be a junk drawer, but it's one that's like a neatly organized junk drawer. So,
one that you got from IKEA, right? Like
with like a little specific space for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Organized.
Pens for forks.
Trackers.
Yeah.
Ads for things that you just bought.
Yeah. Those are the curtains that I already have.
That and I didn't know what it was called until recently. That's called remarketing. 90% of people are like, yeah, I know what that is. Why did it take you so long to know? But yeah, it's like if you're at Amazon and you buy a spatula and then you go to the Weather Channel app and you see a spatula and you're just like, I got the spatula.
That exact spatula.
Leave me alone. I gave you the money. But it's really effective. Everybody that I've talked to is like, yeah, maybe a little bit annoying, but his stuff.
But it works.
Yeah. So
unfortunately, that's the landscape we live in.
Yeah. But I mean, I'll take a certain amount of that stuff, knowing that that's the way that things need to work. Like I would trade that kind of like, I wouldn't even call it annoying. It's more just like dumb computers. Like we're trying too hard. It's fine because it does work in most cases. But like if we could be more transparent about how trackers work, and I think it's actually more like people need to do the work of understanding. It's really easy to add ads and add things and not be like accountable for what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we have to do that kind of work as well. But I would trade like a little bit of like a few extra kilobytes, like moderate like tracking. I mean, and somebody needs to like watch who's doing this. And maybe there's like this is like an idea. I have like an impartial, maybe nonprofit, like third party, like you can get some sort of like gold standard for like we're doing it the right way. We file reports with what our trackers do, so you don't find out that some like megacorp, evil corp type thing has been tracking me, and like as I buy spatulas, like, well, this guy really likes spatulas, so we can sell him. I have one spatula, it's fine, and I also have an egg fork. Anyways, one of those 2-prong things. If you that's actually better than a spatula. So if you're trying to remarket to me, egg fork.
Remember egg fork.
Yeah, I'd take an egg fork over a spatula in most cases. Because it can dual as a self-defense device.
True crime.
Oh, true crime.
No, I haven't stabbed anybody with a fork. What are we talking about? True crime.
On that note,
Awesome.
yeah. Well, Trent, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Super
Yeah,
appreciate
it's a
it.
pleasure.
So much.
Yeah, thanks. And stay tuned, everybody. We're going to have a lot more possibly today, probably tomorrow.
We'll definitely have people coming in from random.
Yeah.
The street.
The rando. So
Randos.
Take
like
care.
You and
Thanks.
me and him.